Hare Krishna! Hello, hello. Welcome everyone to episode 11 in the Bhagavad Gita. We have made it up to chapter 2, verse 45. Very exciting. But first, some invocation. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksur Unmilitam Yena Tashmai Shri Gurove Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadam Bhayam Dadati Sva Padantikam. That was the first time I did that. It actually sounded okay. And one more. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Cool. Works for me. Let's get right to it. 245. The Vedas mainly deal with the subject of the three modes of material nature. Rise above these modes, O Arjuna. Be transcendental to all of them. Be free from all dualities and from all anxieties for gain and safety, and be established in the self. Okay, important here. It says anxieties for gain and safety. So that means, yes, you are allowed to be safe and have some sort of success for you. That's completely fine and actually expected for someone who is transcendental to the three modes and of a excellent ethos or adhikari. You will probably be successful in one way or another in this world. I'm going to check the word for word translation. Uh, Actually, Krishna doesn't exactly say rise above these modes. He says nistray gunya. So trigunya is the three modes, and then nistray gunya is in the pure state of spiritual existence. So first, Krishna says there are three modes, and the Vedas talk about this. But then there is this pure triguna consciousness, and be and bhava, be that. Near dvandva, free of dvandva, duality. Nitya sattva staha, eternally sattvic. Near yoga kshemaha, acquisition, and so near, that prefix again is meaning free from, acquisition and preservation. So be in the state of yoga, near yoga. I don't know what near yoga means, but kshemaha is probably either acquisition and preservation, near yoga, free from the thought of. Oh, Krishna's saying don't do, or this Sanskrit word means do not be free from the yoga of acquisition and preservation. That makes perfect sense. Don't get caught up in acquisition and preservation. When you're caught up in something, when you're attached, you're in yoga to that thing. So be free from that yoga of materiality. Atmavan, just be established in the self. Pretty self-explanatory for me at this point, but I'm sure Prabhupada has some interesting things to say. It is interesting that Krishna says the Vedas actually deal mostly with these three modes. To gradually elevate the general public from sense gratification to transcendental plane. Yeah, and I mean, this is hard for us to imagine now because back in the day, people were actually reading the Vedas and like practicing them. It's a very different deal today. I mean, very few people are reading the Bhagavad Gita, and of those who are reading, how many are practicing? And of those who are practicing, how many are actually successful? Very, very few. In the beginning, of Vedanta, there is Brahma Jigyasa, questions on supreme transcendence. So, the Karmakanda chapter of the Vedas, that's for, I guess, doing well with sense gratification activities, not being pushed to hell by them and just managing them nicely. And then after that, spiritual realization is offered in the form of the Upanishads, different part of the Vedas. And Bhagavad Gita is part of the fifth Veda, Mahabharata. The Upanishads mark the beginning of transcendental life. Very interesting. I mean, the first four Vedas are, oh God, to the people today, just so, like, the rules and regulations are so far beyond our ability to even think about practicing. But in an earlier time, things were different, and many people were practicing this. But even of those people, very few had transcended those procedural sadhanas and actually attained the transcendental stage, first offered in the form of the Upanishads. And so one has to simply tolerate all these dualities and eventually become free from the anxieties regarding gain and loss and all the other dualities. And final sentence in the purport here: this transcendental position is achieved in full Krishna consciousness when one is fully dependent on the good will of Krishna. You want to jump right to the end? That's the end of all this. 246. All purposes that are served by the small pond can at once be served by the great reservoirs of water. Similarly, all the purposes of the Vedas can be served to one who knows the purpose behind them. The purpose behind them is basically Krishna consciousness. Now, this is a very mystical, mysterious verse, so I'm going to read the whole purport here. The rituals and sacrifices in the Karmakanda of the Vedas encourage gradual development to self-realization. And the purpose of self-realization is stated in Bhagavad Gita 15:15, to know Lord Krishna, the cause of everything. So, and because the living entities are parts and parcel of Krishna, this revival of Krishna consciousness is the highest perfectional stage of Vedic knowledge. The whole point of the knowledge is to revive what's already chit, perfect knowledge that is the nature of the soul, which is what we are. And this is confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam 3:33-7. O my Lord, a person who is chanting your holy name, although born of a low family like that of a Chandala, dog-eater, is situated on the highest platform of self-realization. Such a person must have performed all kinds of penances and sacrifices according to Vedic rituals and studied the Vedic literatures many, many times after taking his bath in all the holy places of pilgrimage. Such a person is considered to be the best of the Aryan family. So yeah, it's all about chanting the holy name, and but typically, well, the interesting thing it says here is that even though this simple process of just chanting the holy names does work and it's great and the best and everything, actually just getting to that point of just starting the chanting means you've done a lot of really good stuff in your past lives. And that seems to make sense based from some stories I heard. There's one devotee here who told me that he met someone trying to practice who couldn't chant. Like, I don't mean like they were physically unable to say the Lord's names. They would try to start saying Hare Krishna. They just couldn't physically do it, probably because of just sinful reactions from previous lifetimes and whatever else. More commonly, you'll meet people who can say Hare Krishna. It's just sound. I can shoot it out of my mouth, no problem. But to do anything deeper than that is really special. So one must be intelligent enough to understand the purpose of the Vedas without being attached to the rituals only, and must not desire to be elevated to the heavenly kingdoms for a better quality of sense gratification. That's one thing the Western Abrahamic religions have never realized, not once. I mean, not on an institutional level, not or a societal level. Never understood this. Maybe actually only the Jews. Um, Heaven is kind of like a scam. Like it's a real. There are heavenly planets, and you go. But what are you doing there? You're just doing the same sense gratification you're doing here, just to a higher level. Um, and that's not heaven. That's just the same life you're doing now, but better. When we talk about salvation, redemption, enlightenment, liberation, all these like ultimate final stages, that's different from heaven. Heaven is different. So if you're mistaking heaven for the end goal, you if you're serious about it and you work hard, you'll get there, I guess. But that's not the end goal. It doesn't end there. It is not possible in the common age, for the common man in this age to follow all the Vedic rituals, as I said earlier. Requires too much time, energy, and knowledge. Um, but the best purpose of Vedic culture in this age is by chanting the holy name of the Lord, as recommended by Lord Chaitanya, who is the one of only 2 or 3 avatars of the Lord to show up in this age. I guess I don't know about Krishna. Like did Krishna come just at the as soon as he departed, did that mark the beginning of Kali Yuga, or was it already Kali Yuga when he came here? I'm not sure, but Lord Buddha definitely and Lord Chaitanya definitely. I guess well, Lord Christ is on the same plane as Lord Buddha, maybe. That's what I've heard. Anyway, when Lord Chaitanya was asked by a great Vedic scholar, Prakashananda Sarasvati, why he, the Lord, was chanting the holy name of the Lord like a sentimentalist instead of studying Vedanta philosophy. It's basically saying, well, why are you doing bhakti yoga? Why don't you do the more serious kinds of yoga? The Lord replied that his spiritual master found him to be a great fool. And thus he asked him to chant the holy name of Lord Krishna. He did so and became ecstatic like a madman. In this age of Kali, most of the population is foolish and not adequately educated to understand Vedanta. And the best purpose of Vedanta is just by chanting, served by inoffensively chanting the holy name. Vedanta is the last word in Vedic wisdom, and the author and knower of Vedanta is Krishna. And the highest Vedantist is the great soul who takes pleasure in chanting the holy name of the Lord, which is non-different than the Lord. And that's the ultimate purpose of all Vedic mysticism. 247. You have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action. Never consider yourself to be the cause of the results of your activities, and never be attached to not doing your duty. Wow. I love these are my favorite kind of verses in this chapter and then the whole Bhagavad Gita because it's Aristotelian. Aristotle was my first master, and Krishna is speaking from the same place of authority here as Aristotle. I don't mean like they're on the same level, but I mean it's the same rhetoric where it's saying this is obviously true and practically relevant. So Just get it and do it. There's no sugar here at all. Zero sugar. That's how I like it. And this is one thing that, like, I mean, so many devotees don't get, the whole Western world doesn't get. Like, well, maybe I'll riff on it and see if Prabhupada says the same thing I do. Why are you not entitled to the fruits of action? Well, because the main thing that's making all this action happen is triguna, is the three modes. And you're not the master of the three modes. Even if you transcend them, you're not the creator master of them. So, and whatever fruit you get, it's not yours anyway. It's just something that you just have temporarily, just like your body is not yours. It's yours in the moment, but eventually you have to remove it like another garment and get a new one. So even your body isn't yours. What to speak of all the fruits that you put in the body? They're even less yours. Prabhupada says there are three considerations here: prescribed duties, capricious work, and inaction. Capricious, I want to look that up quick. I believe that means like faulty, but it might be worse than that, maybe like vicious. Oh, given to sudden and unaccountable changes of mood or behavior. So yeah, like not serious. Capricious work is like maybe like prajalpa work might be a good enough synonym. And then there's inaction, where you're just not doing anything. Prescribed duties refer to activities performed while one is in the modes of material nature. Capricious work means actions without the sanction of authority, like nonsense, concocted nonsense, like prajalpa, basically, prajalpa work. And inaction means not performing one's prescribed duties. So obviously it goes from best to worst. But inaction it's important to clarify that. Thank you, Prabhupada. Inaction doesn't mean just meditating and not sleeping. It means specifically not doing what you should do. That's inaction. The Lord advised that Arjuna not be inactive, but that he perform his prescribed duty without being attached to the result. One who is attached to the result of his work is also the cause of the action. Thus, he is the enjoyer or sufferer of the result of such actions. Okay, that's a new one I did not expect. So, actually, you can be the cause of the action that you're doing. But if you are the cause of the action, that means you must enjoy or suffer the result of those actions. And whether it's enjoyment or suffering, you lose. Both cases you lose, because you get more entangled in this material reality. So whether you are or are not in absolute truth the cause of your action, you should act as if you are not the cause of your actions and you're just going through the motions of following your duties and doing what you should do. It's exactly what Krishna tells Arjuna, and it's exactly what Krishna is telling us to do. And yeah, this worst possible. I like it. This is another triad, another exactly three elements here that form one whole to describe part of this spiritual science that we can study and continue practicing. Prescribed duty, capricious work, and inaction. So Arjuna, he was wanting to do inaction. He wanted to do the worst possible thing in this instance. And that is why Krishna was very happy to like sit him down and do this whole long talk with him. Whereas if, for instance, instead Arjuna was capricious about this and said, all right, yeah, I guess I'll fight, but I like, there's some guys I'll attack and there's some guys I won't attack because I like them and different things like that. interestingly enough, that mood may have been more difficult for Krishna to educate and change in Arjuna, because why? It's that's one thing that's actually self-evident to me, but very hard to explain. Um, when you're already in the mood of doing your duty, but just not doing it well, I mean, it really just depends on your adhikari, your ethos. Anyway, this is all hypothetical and doesn't matter. It wouldn't happen anyway, because the whole way that this story came into being is that Arjuna has saintly characteristics, and that's why he moved towards inaction. It's because of his saintly character. So if he was instead moving towards capricious work, he would be of a different character. So that's a whole different thing. That's just hypothetical and doesn't matter. As far as prescribed duties are concerned, they can be fitted into three subdivisions, namely routine work, emergency work, and desired activities. Okay, here's a triad within the triad. Excellent. I am going to write this one in my notes. This is a very critical verse here. 47. Not entitled to fruits of action and triad within triad. That's what I wrote in my notes. So I can always just, I'm going to write purport. So I can look at that later if I need to. I love the triads. Those are my favorite things. As far as the science of this goes, because they actually work. That's why it's three modes, and then three things within one of the modes, and three things within those three things. This gives you a visual way to diagram and see everything exactly as it is. And also, the more importantly than that, the practice of dvandva, duality, extremes, and then that third element, which is either in the middle or transcendent of the two. That's the name of the game. That's everything. So it has to be in threes. Everything has to be in threes, exactly as they are here. And also in the Ethos book that I wrote based off Aristotle. Go to ethosananda.com for your copy of the Ethos book. Routine work, in terms of scriptural injunctions, is done without desire for results. As one has to do it, obligatory work is action in the mode of goodness. As one has to do it. Okay, because it's obligatory, it's in the mode of goodness. I think that's because you have to do it and you're actually doing it. Then it's in the mode of goodness. If you have to do it and you're not doing it, or you're doing it capriciously, then you have tamasic and rajasic, respectively. Work with results becomes the cause of bondage. Therefore, such work is not auspicious. Everyone has his proprietary right in regard to prescribed duties, but should act without attachment to the result. Everyone has his right. Proprietary right? I don't know what that means. And I'm going to have to actually look at proprietary, which is a word I've used many times before, but English is a bloody nightmare. So sometimes to really get it, you got to go to the etymology. Proprietary, holding property. Oh, yeah, it comes from property. So you have the right to property in regard to your duties. So I guess Prabhupada is saying, kind of like how he said at the end of the first paragraph, that actually we do have um, a right to the fruit of our actions. Now, but Krishna says, don't consider yourself to be the cause of the results of your activities. So you have the right to do that, but Krishna is saying never consider that. No, don't think yourself as look at all the rights I have, and so you need. Oh my God, it is so beautiful, right? It's so relevant to all this leftist SJW communist nonsense happening. What do they always scream about? My rights. This is exactly against the Bhagavad Gita, against Krishna. You don't have rights. You don't. That's the whole point of growing up, is you don't have any rights. When you're a child, you think, Mommy, Daddy, give it to me. You have to give it to me. I can't do it myself, so you have to give it to me. And that's true. And then they have a right to bitch and moan, and then the parents, they have a prescribed duty to fulfill that whining and moaning until they become adults, and then they have to know it doesn't work like that anymore. So these people are children who are whining and screaming about rights all the time instead of responsibilities. As Jordan Peterson said, going 10 levels, a million levels higher than that is what we have here. Yes, we should act without attachment to the result, and such disinterested, obligatory duties doubtlessly lead one to the path of liberation. That's that's the golden standard here, is disinterested, obligatory duties. If you can nail all three of those and be in that a constant state of that all the time, you will absolutely be liberated from the material world. Now, that's not the ultimate goal, of course, but it will definitely work. I can attest to that myself. Um, there are many guys I train judo with who, they just want to win. They're all about the fruit of, and I am too, to a degree. We all are. But the reason I always love judo is because I can just do it for the sake of doing it, because this is a practice which simply makes me a better person, much like any of these yogas Krishna mentions, any of them, karma, jnana, bhakti, any jnana, all of them just make you a better person. Once you actually start doing them, yeah, you can say bhakti's the best, jnana's the best, whatever, it doesn't matter. As long as you understand what it is and you're practicing and getting results, you're not just getting fruit, you're actually um, you're improving yourself. You're improving your adhikari, your ethos, which will in turn give you more good opportunities to even further increase yourself, which will give you a better birth, next birth, or a better chance to meet Krishna, because Krishna will only talk to you in one of two ways. He'll only meet you in contact with you in one of two ways. Either one, you are humble enough and eager enough, and he'll take pity on you and compassion on you, and take care of you like the guru does. A bona fide guru does the same exact thing as that. Or you can meet Krishna by being that excellent where he just has to deal with you. It's like Indra, Shiva, Brahma. They can call up Krishna. Maybe not all the time, but once in a while they see him, because they're hanging there, because they're at these demigods are at such a high level that they're just there. Um, so you know there's basically there's other ways as well, but I know I'm biased. I'm ethos Ananda, so I'm saying, look, you have ethos or you have Ananda. You don't have really anything else than that. Um, but for both of those paths, whether you're just being so excellent that and you just get promoted again after again, better bodies, better positions, until eventually you're a demigod. And then Krishna will like just come right into you and say, hey man, you did a good job with that. Hey, can you do this for me too? And you say, yeah, sure, Krishna. Oh, it's my pleasure. In the same way this happens in the material world, where all of a sudden, you just rise up in the ranks until you're like, I don't know, a district attorney or something. And then once you're in that position, you're going to have to talk to, the other leaders of the state. You just like, whether you like them or not, now you have to start dealing with those people because you're in that position. So you can constantly promote yourself until you just naturally end up meeting Krishna. Or you can, what's recommended here and from Lord Chaitanya is to cry out his name from a state of sincere and deep humility, without offense. And that's enough, actually. Krishna is very happy to respond to your call, especially in this age, and especially considering how many people are not doing that. You can be very, very low birth. You can be a dog eater. It doesn't matter. Once again, I'm speaking from experience. I am not like, I would probably say I'm very high birth compared to my peers, but my peers are monkeys. So I don't know what that means. Like if I was born in like to me, like the golden standard of human society now is a place like, for example, Okinawa, Japan, or um, maybe like middle class suburban Nepal or Tibet before China messed it up. Like these are like really advanced people just by birth, um, you know. And so if I was born in that situation, and I might be a total loser over there. For where I was born here, different story. But anyway, it's not enough. The only way you actually advance and actually touch God consciousness is by being worthy of that in some way or another. And for most of us, that means just being humble. You have to actually, you have to really see yourself as exactly as small as you are. And it's very small in truth, and most people just aren't willing to accept that. So they can do their offenseful chanting of the holy names all the time for decades even and get very little in return. And it's not because the holy names aren't working, it's because they're doing it with offense. And um, really understanding your place and his place, and then chanting, like, it just has to be pure and sincere. Like you don't have to be a pure devotee. Like you don't have to have all this great adhikari, but in that one moment, right when you chant, or even before you're just about to chant, if there's purity there in that single moment, and you just start to say one syllable, that's it. Krishna's listening very carefully in times like these. Um, Unfortunately or fortunately, that's Sanatan Dharma. It's all about purity, and purity is a really hard game. There's so many things that can go wrong. So Arjuna was therefore advised by the Lord to fight as a matter of duty without attachment to the result. His non-participation in the battle is another side of attachment. Such attachment never leads one to the path of salvation. Okay, quick note on this, obviously. Normally, when we act based on attachment, it's for some positive gain, like more money or status or whatever. That's a more easy example to see this bad kind of attachment, material attachment. But Arjuna is doing the same exact thing, just in the inverse negative way. Instead of being attached to something positive he will get, he is attached to something bad he might get. So he's avoiding these things, but it's based on material attachment. It's the same thing as the other kind of material attachment. It's just manifested differently. Such attachment never leads one to the path of salvation. Any attachment, positive or negative, is cause for bondage. Inaction is sinful. Yeah, and remember, the definition of inaction, according to Prabhupada in this purport here, is not doing your prescribed duties. Inaction is a technical term here. This is not English. You have to really pay attention here to how this works. Aristotle does the same thing. As soon as the author, the master, writes inaction means this, from that moment on, you have to use his definition, not the dictionary definition. So inaction means specifically not doing the obligatory duties for you. That is sinful. By definition, it is. Now, inaction, according to the English language, also means just like sitting around and not doing anything, which is fine if you've already completed your obligatory duties for the day and you're relaxing. That's fine. And according to English language, that could be called inaction. But according to Prabhupada in this verse, in this category of truth we're talking about here, that's not inaction, that's amusement. And this kind of inaction Prabhupada's talking about is sinful by definition. Therefore, fighting as a matter of duty was the only auspicious path of salvation for Arjuna. Okay, next, one of my all-time favorite verses, one of the most important verses in any text ever, chapter 2, verse 48. Be steadfast in yoga, O Arjuna. Perform your duty and abandon all attachment to success or failure. Such evenness of mind is called yoga. So here Krishna defines explicitly what is yoga. It is an evenness of mind. It is a state of consciousness most epitomized or characterized by its evenness or equanimity. Equal in what? Equal compared to dualities, dvandva. In the purport, Krishna tells Arjuna that he should act in yoga. And what is that yoga? Yoga means to concentrate the mind upon the Supreme by controlling the ever-disturbing senses. Okay, did you see how Srila Prabhupada smuggled God into here as, what's that atheist craphole's name? Sam Harris. Sam Harris gets mad when people like Jordan Peterson smuggle God into the conversation. That was sneaky. You're not supposed to be able to do it. I'm an atheist. I have rights too. All right. So if you're listening to this, you're on the same side as me. So when I tell you that Srila Prabhupada just smuggled God into the purport here in the second or third sentence here, and that it was sneaky, you should know by now that I'm saying that in a very flattering, honoring, complimentary way. I wish I was as clever and as good at preaching as Srila Prabhupada here. Because in a sense, it's not that Prabhupada is saying something against Krishna here. Prabhupada is expanding upon this very fundamental and elemental definition of yoga in this verse. He's taking that, keeping it as it is, and then expanding it in relation particularly to bhakti yoga. So this is classic Bhakti Vedanta right here, what Srila Prabhupada is doing. Once again, concentrating the mind upon the Supreme, that's bhakti, by controlling the ever-disturbing senses. So controlling the ever-disturbing senses, that is the evenness of mind called yoga that Krishna is talking about. So because we're only in chapter 2 here, Prabhupada's skipping ahead basically, and he's telling us, well, why? Why do you just want to have an equal mind? Will that bring liberation? Yes. Is that the ultimate goal? No. So once you understand the transcendental or absolute or ultimate goal of yoga and action in general, then in that sense, every kind of yoga is bhakti yoga, as we talked about last week, I'm pretty sure. Yep. And who is the Supreme? The Supreme is the Lord. And because he himself is telling Arjuna to fight, Arjuna has nothing to do with the results of the fight. Um, and this is one mercy we get by having a guru, a bona fide master, teacher, whatever. Um, when we have a bona fide master and we take shelter in them and properly surrender to them, and they tell us explicitly what to do, it's so we just do it. That the disturbances of the mind coming from the three modes and from other living entities and so on that are naturally occurring all the time, those are muted into almost nothing. And all you have is just the order of the master and the protection from that, where if as long as you follow it exactly as he tells you to do it, there are no fruits from that action. Whether they're good or bad, they're not yours. So, and in that, because he gives you the opportunity and circumstance to practice that, um, and you start doing it more and more, you get closer and closer to this yoga, to this, and then to liberation. It's basically training wheels. You can do the same thing yourself without a guru, but it is a lot harder, a lot easier to get messed up in the head or to mess up others. So obviously, I mean, it's just common sense. Like you want to be good at something, but you don't want to approach a teacher. You're an idiot. You're a moron. Okay, that's what that means. It doesn't matter if you're like I know in this sense, yeah, modern individualistic Americans are more moronic than most other people. That's true, but it doesn't. It's not a cultural thing. It's way more basic than that. How are you going to get good at something without having a model that's already good at it to follow? How is that going to happen? You can just trial and error, good luck, you know? But as long as you're willing to take a small little bitty hit to your false ego, you can uh, advance very quickly, much quicker than you might think. All right. I hope you feel purified by my teachings here, my sermon here. Gain or victory are Krishna's concern. Arjuna is simply advised to act according to the dictation of Krishna. The following of Krishna's dictation is real yoga, and this is practiced in the process called Krishna consciousness. Okay, that's even more sneaky. But yeah, so Krishna is giving a philosophical and theological foundation and linguistic foundation now in this verse by defining yoga so explicitly. Does that mean that's the real yoga, meaning the ultimate conception of yoga? No, as we find out later. And once again, Prabhupada's just skipping ahead to the point. Real yoga is Krishna consciousness, and is specifically following the dictation of Krishna, which can come in the form of Shastra, Guru, and Sadhu, right? By Krishna consciousness only can one give up the sense of proprietorship. Um, yeah, I don't know if I can argue against that. I mean, you could say like if I don't own the results of my work, well, maybe the three modes because they come from the three modes, so they go back into the three modes, and that there's a very practical truth to that, which is beneficial and will help you improve. But it's impersonal and it's not the where does the three modes come from? They comes from Krishna, so you're going to get there anyway. One has to become the servant of Krishna or the servant of Krishna. That is the right way to discharge duty in Krishna consciousness, which alone can help one to act in yoga. Okay, yoga is italicized here. Okay, so now Prabhupada is because he italicized yoga in the purport here. I don't know if he's done that before throughout the Gita. I don't know if it matters anyway. I mean, maybe just because it's a Sanskrit word, it's being italicized. But anyway, once again, just like in the last purport, Srila Prabhupada is now referring to his definition of yoga, which is concentrating the mind upon the Supreme by controlling the ever-disturbing senses. And the Supreme means Krishna. So concentrating the mind upon Krishna by controlling the ever-disturbing senses. And so by doing your duty as a servant, that will bring you to yoga. Arjuna is a kshatriya, and as such, he is participating in the Varnashram Dharma institution. Institution, really bad word there. Because if you've read or listened to Daneshvar at all recently, you've heard him say that institutions are inherently demonic, and I tend to agree. Assuming that you define an institution as a organization made up with legal documents and bylaws and all this crap, a corporation like these, what the modern colloquial usage of the word institution, yeah, it's demonic. It's just bad. There's no good institution. They're all bad. It's just different degrees of bad. Better we say the Varnashram Dharma system, because that is what it is anyway, actually. It is said in the Vishnu Purana that in the Varnashram Dharma, the whole aim is to satisfy Vishnu. No one should satisfy himself, as is the rule in the material world, but one should satisfy Krishna. So unless one satisfies Krishna, one cannot correctly observe the principles of Varnashram Dharma. Indirectly, Arjuna was advised to act as Krishna told him. Yeah, so once again, going back to one of the first live streams I did, from this point on, and basically until chapter 18, Krishna is teaching Arjuna more and more indirectly, because the very first attempt at telling him directly, you must fight, so start fighting, it didn't work. His pupil was not willing to accept that instruction. So the teacher begins to change the rhetoric until it becomes more palatable. That is from now until the rest of the Gita, what we're happening here. I think this is mostly just review. This last paragraph here talking about Varnashram Dharma, I'm not sure. Yeah, it's not totally relevant to this verse, I think. I think Prabhupada is just tying this back in full circle to the narrative that's the Bhagavad Gita, the mythological basis for this discourse here. Excellent. All right, y'all. I'll see you next time, and we will do chapter 2, verse 49 next time. Okay, remember, Krishna is God, and God is great. Allahu Akbar! And we just chant his holy names, and that's all we need to do. But if you have trouble advancing with the chanting, then some understanding can help. And that's what I am doing now here. All right, see y'all next week. Hare Krsna.